You're watching FemVids, I'm Sian Rolls, and this is basically my last one. I was thinking about going out with a bang because fireworks were still being set off yesterday, even though it is basically now the 1st of November. I'm here to talk about something that's very close to my heart, almost literally. I'm talking about Pink October. 2014 has been a very interesting year for me for Pink October because not only did I have to do Who Makes the News and see how Pink October and breast cancer are really making the news, but it was also the first year that not only were we celebrating, the finish of my mother's, journey through breast cancer, but also my grandmother, who went through all the tests at the beginning of the year and had more or less finished her treatment by October. So we're both glad, that they had come and gone through those journeys. And I had a chance to speak at basically what was known to be the last Pink October event of the year. It was a Westpac Cancer Society sort of event where people basically asked to give, and all the money raised at the event, and I assume at any peripheral events for Westpac, would all go to the Colonial War Memorial Hospital's oncology ward. That's where my grandmother actually received her chemo, and then there were the two nurses that had seen her through pretty much most of her journey in terms of the medical side, and it was very overwhelming. I was one of three speakers. The first one was our Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, Rosie Akbar, who has definitely been making the news, not only in terms of, Parliament is now sat, Cabinet has been formed, but also I do believe that she has been doing a couple of the rounds around the country, doing consultations with different communities, and has been talking about Pink October for quite a while. So she spoke. There was also a story of another survivor who spoke, who is not only a survivor of cervical cancer, but also breast cancer more recently. And then I was invited to speak, to some extent on behalf of my mother, who was invited to speak at a lot of Pink October events, because being a little bit of a public figure, being a championing person when it comes to women and issues and things like that, as executive director of FemLink Pacific, but also as a woman that has gone through and survived breast cancer, and this is the fourth year. She's actually out of the country doing a whole lot of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 stuff, and hey, there are lots of videos about that if you're interested. So I was asked to speak, and I did preface what I had pre-written with the stories of my mother and my grandmother. My mother's detection in 2010 at the end of it, and my grandmother's detection at the beginning of 2014. And I mean, sharing one of my favorite theories, which is that there are probably about, possibly more, 7 billion breasts in the world, and yet they're so often overlooked, and society still treats it as something either shameful, no matter how important it is to this, human nature. I mean, when you feed a child, people are still saying breast is best, but, after somebody uses their body to raise a child, there's still so much stigma. With treatment, yes, but also with the affirmation that somebody has to look after their body and talk about something that's almost incredibly visible, but still is told it's not something you talk about because it's a sensitive area. So I spoke about that, and I also spoke about what I think is honestly the most important thing when it comes to anybody before, during, and after any sort of breast cancer treatment. And I did kind of plug a little bit, and I will share here, that it is so frustrating that a lot of people are still talking about early detection here in Fiji, when the treatment for early detection, which is a lumpectomy often followed by radiotherapy treatment, the latter of the two actually still not being available here. Even the woman that shared her story at the Pink October event that I was also at did say that she herself had to, find ways to raise money to go overseas for treatment, something that my mother had to do, and something that we're glad my grandmother doesn't have to do. She doesn't need radiation therapy treatment according to the surgeons and the doctors and all sorts. So that's a frustration, but dealing with the realities is incredibly important, and one of the things to make sure that you are definitely addressing as supporters and as an individual is the comfort level of somebody going through treatment going through the realization of breast cancer and then following and trying to continue on life after treatment or in whatever form. I talked about things like having access to bras with inserts to look and feel normal to some extent. Something that my mother had to go through for a number of years before an elective mastectomy, so she now no longer has breasts. But then again, that goes back as well to clothing, and sometimes it's incredibly frustrating for people because there's, you know, typically women's clothing accounts for breasts, for example, and so there's some awkwardness in terms of trying to find clothes that fit and that are comfortable. And then there's sleeping, which is unfortunately incredibly frustrating for a lot of people that may have had mastectomies. And we were lucky, at least in my mother's case, that she was given a very specific pillow, which is made, I'm not necessarily 100% sure of the nature of the fabric, but it's basically a cool fabric, and it loops around your arm, so, you know, you're kind of accounting for what was there, but is no longer there. And a lot of people don't necessarily have access to these kinds of things, particularly if they don't necessarily have the same kind of connections as people may have had in terms of having the network that knows about these kinds of things. And so, you know, when I was talking about comfort, it's about access to information and knowing and having strong organizations that can tell you how to just make things easier. I also talked about some of the funny things because, you know, it was an incredibly heavy personal story, and I wouldn't have wanted that woman to tell her story any other way, because she was very honest. And, you know, honesty is incredibly important, because sharing people's individual stories is just kind of, it gives people an idea about what to expect, but again, everybody's experience is different, so the more stories it told, the more likely somebody afraid that might be going through treatment is able to find someone with a similar experience and gain courage from that. And so one of the things that I shared was, one of the funniest things in the preparation of my mother's first mastectomy was that the surgeon said that my mother had a good-sized breast. Because women who tend to have smaller breasts occasionally might need a skin graft after the mastectomy. My mother didn't. And in an effort to get fit, because she is a woman that travels a lot, she is incredibly busy, and so she bought herself a bicycle, because that's something that she figured would get her active and also just provide, you know, an alternative to having to drive everywhere as a person who sits all day at a computer or is stuck in a plane, as I do believe she is now. And so you have the fact that she bought this bicycle and she tried to ride it, but she didn't realize until just then that her balance was all out. So, you know, just people saying small things like that. I mean, it does mean that every now and again she has to be careful, you know, if she's encountering stairs to some extent, but I guess after the elective mastectomy things have improved slightly and so on. But, you know, one of the most important things, at least for me for Pinktober, is that people don't forget anything and everything that might have been shared or done in the month of October for breast cancer awareness and for breast cancer fundraising and all sorts, and just knowing that those things remain there and continue to be there no matter whatever time of year it is. And so I guess that goes for saying for a lot of other things. I mean, Rural Women's Day was incredibly special and was something else. That was one of the last few videos that I did. And unfortunately for a lot of other people, rural women are just kind of like something on the wayside, and that's incredibly frustrating. You know, the rights of children or the importance of all sorts of different types of things, you know, including the importance of the diversity of our country and of our world. You know, every now and again when there is a religious holiday, of which we only celebrate, I think, 3 in Fiji, everybody always talks about diversity, and then so we only have one, in November, December, April, and June, because Christians get Easter and Christmas. That said, it's also a decent time for everybody to just reflect on the end of the year in terms of the Western way of measuring space and time, which almost everybody does. And so, you know, personally reflecting on the end of my journey here with FemVids and with Femlink Pacific, as I continue to go and do more things, but hopefully continue to try and help in whatever way I can in contributing to an organization that's given me so many opportunities. This is coming to the end of my 7th year with FemVid. One should never forget the experiences that one has or whatever one hears, because it's going to come in handy someday. Whether it is about sharing information with somebody that might be close to you or otherwise, you know, just remembering, keeping an open mind, and being willing to share whenever possible, because sharing is incredibly important. It's one of the things I believe in, and I hope that you would do the same, in whatever small way or otherwise. So, thanks so much for watching. This has been another FemVid. I've been Sian Rolls. You, dearest viewer, have been amazing. Don't forget, there'll still be so many things coming out on the FemVid Pacific channel, and if you want to know what I might be doing, I do have my own personal one. And see you next time.